Hi, I'm Kat and today I have for you a true crime case, a word in Romanian, and I will also be doing my makeup at the same time. So the word for today is cine. 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 Well done guys, you just said who. Today's case was suggested to me by Patricia Burns, so thank you so much Patricia for the suggestion. And actually I was planning to record this video for Valentine's Day, but I had some other videos as well planned and yeah, I didn't get the chance to get them all out before Valentine's Day. 15th of February 1997, one day after Valentine's Day, started out just like any other regular day for the Jenkins family. Lois, 9-year-old Esther and 7-year-old Maya were out shopping for the day, whilst Siôn, 10-year-old Lottie and 12-year-old Annie went to a local DIY store. Billie-Jo chose to stay home and paint the patio doors. She was home alone. When Siôn and the girls returned home, they discovered the lifeless body of Billie-Jo in the back garden. She was found in a puddle of her own blood with a paint pot and a paintbrush to the side. Billie-Jo was beaten to death with an 18-inch iron tent peg which was found near her body. The attack was a brutal and frenzied one, using a tent peg that came from the tool shed at the bottom of the garden. Billie-Jo sustained severe head injuries. She wasn't sexually assaulted, ruling out a sexual motivation. There was also no evidence that anyone broke into the family's home. So, the question is, what happened to Billie-Jo? Who could have done it? She was just a kid, home alone, painting the patio doors. Billie-Jo Margaret Jenkins, born on 29th of March 1983, was raised in East London in the UK and lived with her father, Bill Jenkins, and her mother, Deborah. Her father went to prison and her mother was actually unable to cope on her own, so sadly when Billie-Jo was 9 years old, she was placed in foster care with Siôn and Lois Jenkins, who coincidentally had the same surname as her. Billie-Jo's biological parents separated and Deborah went on to live in Ilford and Bill in Canning Town. Although in foster care, Billie-Jo remained in contact with her biological parents. Siôn and Lois, the foster parents, already had children of their own, 4 daughters, Esther, Maya, Lottie and Annie. Siôn didn't really want to foster any children, but his wife Lois kind of, convinced him to do it. Lois was a social worker, she had 3 other siblings and her parents also fostered children, so she really wanted to do the same. Eventually, Siôn agreed and one afternoon in June 1992, Billie-Jo moved with the family in London and became an integral part in their lives. They then decided to move to Hastings on the East Sussex coast, where Billie-Jo attended Helens Wood Comprehensive School, where she was a well-liked and hard-working student. The move to Hastings was idyllic for Billie-Jo. For the first few weeks, she would spend hours by the seaside. She was just thriving. She had made friends and she flourished with her best friend Holly's friendship. They did everything together. They were actually inseparable. They were both pupils at the same school, and outside of school, they would spend time together in each other's bedrooms. They would sing along to their favorite pop group E17, dreaming really of a future. Billie-Jo was just so much fun to be around. She was a performer. She loved singing, dancing, acting, and she would be in her element whenever she was performing. She aspired to become an actor or an actress.
Singing, dancing, acting, any kind of performing, she was in her element. That's what she did all the time. Yeah, Billie was never happier than when she was performing in somewhere or another, whether it was like a school play that we were rehearsing for a drama or just when we were kind of messing around or whatever, that's when she was at her happiest.
Check that in party, that's Friends Fun. It's a story about when Cinderella goes to a disco. Take that memory. She's blind and black.
The family appeared intelligent, articulate, the adults professionals. Siôn was a deputy headmaster, Lois was a senior social worker. I mean, you can say that they were your average working class family. Billie-Jo had been living with the foster family for 5 years before the tragic events of today's case. But the thing is, Siôn, her foster father, wasn't that great of a father even to his own children. He had been violent as they grew up and he would use corporal punishment against them, so Billie-Jo didn't really have it easy even after moving in with the foster parents. She had told 2 of her school friends that Siôn punched her and scratched her neck, and on one occasion Billie-Jo went to school with blood on her face, saying that Siôn held her up against the door after she told him to stop slapping her pet dog Buster. Her school friends also said that a lot of the times Billie-Jo went to school with bruises on her arms and legs, claiming that they were from arguments with her father. She even wrote once on her knuckles the hate word and "I hate my dad," referring to Siôn. Siôn would later admit that yes, he did slap Billie-Jo in anger and he occasionally hit the children with a slipper or a ruler. His wife Lois also described his vein-popping anger when he lost his temper with Billie-Jo. Family friends witnessed Billie-Jo being kicked violently in the ankle by Siôn while they were on holiday in France in August 1996, even though Billie-Jo was struggling with a sprained ankle at the time. Siôn had said that she injured her ankle on purpose for attention, and he confronted her about this, really angry, and the family friend who witnessed this even said that he beat the living hell out of her. Siôn went to such lengths that he even kicked her injured ankle, which obviously would have caused even more pain to Billie-Jo. Siôn Jenkins worked as a deputy head teacher of the local boys' comprehensive William Parker School in Hastings, but he got the job because he lied about his qualifications on his CV, and he lied again on a new application to become the head of the school. When Siôn was a teenager, he was suspended from his school because of behavioral issues. Siôn also stood as a Conservative Party candidate in local elections. On 14th of February 1997, Siôn and Lois had an argument over Billie-Jo. It's not really known why. However, on the 15th of February, the next day, on Saturday, it was just another normal day. Annie and Billie-Jo were tasked to do some chores for extra pocket money. Annie cleared the utility room, the family car had to be washed as well, and Annie's job was that to wash the family car along with Lottie, whilst Billie-Jo's job was to paint the patio doors. After arriving home from a trip, Siôn said that he asked Billie-Jo to turn down her music, but she didn't, and this really sent Siôn over the edge. Lois also had a bit of an argument with Billie-Jo that day because Billie-Jo saw a pair of trainers that she really wanted to buy, and so she asked to go out to town to get those trainers, even though she knew that she had her job to do. When Lois didn't allow her to go and reminded her of the chores, Billie-Jo got quite upset, so they were really bickering at each other. Billie-Jo's painting of the patio door was a real mess. Siôn noticed paint on the tiles. She also got paint on the windows as well, and I think it was at this point that Siôn gave Billie-Jo a black beanbag with a blanket inside, possibly to use for the painting so that it doesn't drip on the tires, so it doesn't get even messier. Billie-Jo had walked her dog Buster in the park opposite the family home, Alexandra Park, and Holly, her best friend, offered to help Billie-Jo with the painting of the doors. She told Siôn that she would help her paint, but he said that Billie-Jo will see her biological father at the weekend, so Holly couldn't really go around their house. Later, Siôn took Charlotte, also referred to as Lottie, to her clarinet lessons. So basically, on Saturday, Siôn was with Lottie Annie and Billie-Jo, whilst Lois, the mom, went out with the other girls. In the afternoon, Siôn went to pick Lottie up from the clarinet lessons, taking Annie with him. At 2:55 p.m., Siôn arrived back at 48 Lower Park Road with Lottie and Annie, and Lottie went inside to drop off her clarinet in her bedroom. Now, from here on, the stories kind of start to contradict each other. According to Siôn, they only went inside the house for 2 minutes, so Annie by this point had finished cleaning the car. She had left a bucket of water in front of the house where the car was kept. She and Lottie are waiting in the car for Siôn to get out of the house. At 3:24 p.m., Siôn is out of the house and he gets in the car, and all of a sudden he tells the girls that he needs to go to the shop and buy white spirit, so they all head off to the shop. Billie-Jo allegedly is still painting the patio doors, yet Siôn, although he was in the house, he hasn't seen her, hasn't spoken to her. He did say that he heard some music but didn't check up on her before leaving, which was weird, especially considering the layout of the house. When you get in the door, you have the hallway, and on your left you have the living room, which is where the patio doors to the back of the house are, and you would have to pass by the living room if you want to go anywhere in the house. It's really strange that Siôn didn't even say hi to Billie-Jo or hello, or just to, check up on her. But remember that at 2:55, Lottie drops her clarinet off in her bedroom, then she heads to the car. Siôn leaves the house only at 3:24, so it wasn't 2 minutes like he said. He spent around 30 minutes in that house before getting into the car, whilst Lottie and Annie were waiting for him in the car. Now, they drove off to buy the white spirit that Siôn said they needed. They go to Do It All store, which is a DIY store, even though they already had white spirit at home in the garage. And, go figure, Siôn goes to the store without any cash, without any money whatsoever. Siôn and the girls, they returned home, of course, without any white spirit, and it's at this point that Annie and Lottie discover a brutal scene. The body of 13-year-old Billie-Jo was found in the back garden of the family home in Hastings. She had been battered over the head with an iron tent peg 5 times while she was still painting the patio doors. The tent peg had been left out on the patio earlier in the day by one of the other children in the family. Billie-Jo sadly died within minutes of the assault. Siôn called 999, and by 4:07 p.m. the police was already at the scene. And here it gets very interesting. Right after calling 999, Siôn calls his neighbor Denise Lancaster saying, quote, "It's Billy, there's been an accident, will you come? I don't know what to do," end of quote. Denise was so quick to rush to help that she arrived to the house even before the paramedics did. During the 999 call, however, Siôn even refused to help Billie-Jo, even though he was being instructed by the operator to do so, but he didn't. One of the police cars which arrived at the scene had 2 police officers in plain clothes, Detective Sergeant Ann Capon and PC Paul Hilton. The detective knocked on the door and there was no answer, so she pushed the door open and went into the hallway, but she couldn't really hear any voices, no noise at all, nothing whatsoever. She even thought at one point that they got the wrong house, so she asked if there was anybody there. That's when Siôn came down the stairs and introduced himself, pointing to where Billie-Jo was. The paramedics were already there. The neighbor was still there by Billie-Jo's body. When she was found, she was still clutching a paintbrush. Denise, the neighbor, said that she found Billie-Jo lying on the ground on her front. She also saw some plastic pushed up her nose, like really deep pushed in. That plastic was actually a part of the black beanbag, and Denise even had to forcefully pull it out. the police was confronted with a brutal bloody scene. There was blood everywhere, on the patio doors, on the tires. Billie-Jo was in a pool of blood with a black beanbag by her side. She was lying on her belly and the weapon next to her. And guess what else? The bucket of water that Annie had used to clean the family car, which was left by her at the front of the house. This attack was a frenzied attack, which kind of, suggests anger, a fit of rage. It really seems very personal and up close.
The scene was brutal. The air took on a particular stillness. I sensed in that moment that an evil had entered our home.
45 minutes to get the senior investigating officers there.
The family presented as articulate, intelligent, professional people, and Siôn was the deputy headmaster at a local state school, secondary school. Lois was a social worker, I think, working in London, and 4 other girls in the family, all of whom you need to be spoken to and see what it is that they can tell us about what has happened.
The day had not been uneventful.
Siôn had told police that him and the girls were in the house for only 2 minutes before he called 999. He also said that his wife and the other 2 children were expected back at the house by this point. The police noticed that the side gate didn't have a latch or a hatch on. Basically, there was no lock on that gate. Siôn had said that when he left the house, the gate was closed. The murder weapon came from the property. The bucket of water mysteriously ended up where Billie-Jo was found, at the back of the house. Siôn had called the neighbor over. These things were just odd. The police found it strange that he would do that, go ahead and call the neighbor. The police opened an investigation and they quickly started with door-to-door inquiries. Close to the house there was a small B&B hotel, and they spoke with the owner, who said that there was a guy, a really strange guy, carrying a bag with French bread in it, and this guy had a mark on his face. When he left the hotel, he went down the steps and turned right, the direction of Billie-Jo's house. The police put a press release asking for anyone with information as to who he might be to come forward. Siôn and Lois were also asked to make a public appeal. Police frogmen went to Alexandra Park looking for clues in the water. Billie-Jo's house was part of a row of houses facing opposite Alexandra Park, which was an open public space. Annie and Lottie were also interviewed by police. On 16th of February, the day after Billie-Jo's murder, the police needed to find Bill and Deborah, Billie-Jo's biological parents, to let them know what happened before they would find out from the press. But by the time police got to them in London, the Sun newspaper had already printed the story, and Deborah, Billie-Jo's biological mother, had read the article. The man with the mark on the face became known as Mr. B or Mr. X. And after the press release, police received information about him. People actually reported seeing him in the area at the time of Billie-Jo's murder. He also had a history of really strange behavior, and he had a red mark on his forehead extending down to his face. Within 48 hours, he was identified, and the red mark was actually a birthmark. Police went to his place with a mental health support team, and he became quite violent with one of the female police officers after they knocked on the door. So he was arrested under the Mental Health Act. This man had a fascination with plastic, and he had some pieces of plastic in his pocket when he was arrested. Whilst at the police station, he was seen holding a piece of blue plastic to his face, and so he was strip searched, and more blue plastic was found in his sock and underwear. The plastic was very significant to the police because Billie-Jo had plastic in her nostril, so the 44-year-old man was arrested on suspicion of murder. As it turns out, however, this man had psychiatric problems, so the police couldn't even interview him. He was so ill that you couldn't really believe anything that this man said. He was released from police custody into secure psychiatric care and he was ruled out as a suspect. A few days later, a second man was arrested in connection to Billie-Jo's murder, but the following day he was also released from police custody. Hastings, the town that Billie-Jo lived in, was once a charming holiday resort, but over the years it became rundown. Hotels and B&Bs were left abandoned and flats for patients released under the care in the community scheme began to appear. Some neighbors of the Jenkins family said that there were a number of robberies and vandalism in the area. In fact, the house next door to the Jenkins home was abandoned and boarded up, and there were squatters sleeping there at times. Police announced that they were working on the theory that Billie-Jo's killer was hiding inside the abandoned house next door before he unleashed his attack when he knew that Billie-Jo was home alone. Siôn also informed police that the family had been disturbed by an unknown prowler in the previous months. He said that around 2 weeks before Billie-Jo was murdered, he disturbed a man in their back garden, and a few weeks before that, he spotted a man staring at the family's home from Alexandra Park, which was directly opposite the house. Just a year before, over 1,000 concerned locals signed a petition calling for better security at Alexandra Park after there had been reports of drug dealing and men exposing themselves. The Jenkins family were so scared by this man, as well as the fact that their side gate was found open on several occasions, that they had installed security lighting. Billie-Jo herself complained that she believed she was followed by someone since around Christmas time. She described the man following her in extensive detail to her friends. He was a white man estimated to be in his 40s or 50s and always wore a leather jacket. The description of the man matched the description Siôn gave of the man that he saw staring at the family's home from Alexandra Park. Around 2 years before, Billie-Jo also raised concerns that she was being stalked. Police were informed of her claims, and Helenswood Secondary School were also made aware. She also received a number of strange phone calls where the person on the other end of the line hung up before speaking. Detective Superintendent Jeremy Payne stated, quote, "She had told her parents and friends she felt she was being followed and had spotted a man on some occasions. It appears that she felt this man was paying particular attention to her for some reason," end of quote. But shortly after all of this, Siôn came under suspicion, including from his wife, and he would become the main suspect in Billie-Jo's murder. He was the last person to see her alive and the first adult to find her body, so on 24th of February, 9 days after Billie-Jo's death, he was arrested on suspicion of murder. There were a lot of things that Siôn said and did that got police to really suspect him. He initially claimed he wasn't at the house at the time of the murder, but he then admitted that he was there that afternoon. He first said that he didn't go in the house, but he then later said he went to the front door but didn't go in, eventually admitting he did go in. A police investigation revealed Siôn's strange behavior around the time of Billie-Jo's death, and as soon as they started suspecting him, they collected the whole family's clothing for evidence. The police also discovered 158 microscopic spots of Billie-Jo's blood on Siôn's clothing. According to police, Siôn launched the assault on Billie-Jo when he returned home whilst his two other daughters were waiting in the car outside the front of the house. He then went back to the car and took the girls to a nearby DIY store, but he didn't take any money with him. Police said that he did this to give himself an alibi, supported by the fact that he strangely drove around the nearby park in a circle and took an unusual route, which just extended the journey time. Siôn had claimed that they went to buy some more white spirit, however, they already had white spirit in the garage. He said that when he returned, he found Billie-Jo dead. To police, the idea that a stranger just broke into the garden, found a weapon and killed Billie-Jo during the same 10 minutes that Siôn was away, escaping without anyone noticing, was just impossible. The first thing that Siôn did after finding Billie-Jo dead on the patio was to go back to his car, to close the roof on his convertible, which again just doesn't make any sense. With the type of car that he had, you don't need to go in the car to close the roof. Detectives believe that he did this so that he could later explain why blood might have been found in the car afterwards, since he had killed Billie-Jo and was spattered with blood before getting into his car and driving to the DIY store. And when I did my research on this case, my question was, it was such a frenzied attack and such a bloody scene, how did he go to the store and got into the car without the girls noticing all of the blood on him? Because with the murder and the brutal scene afterwards, it was clear that he would have had a lot of blood on him. And then I kind of found a picture of his jacket, and then it made a bit more sense to me, because his jacket was very dark in color, as in a navy blue, a dark blue color, and I think that if there were tiny blood spatters, you wouldn't really be able to notice them on that dark color. Anyway, his car was tested for blood and faint traces were found in it. He also delayed calling 999, only calling when he was told to do so by the neighbor. After finding Billie-Jo, he didn't use the phone next to her to call the ambulance, and when he eventually did call 999, he refused to put Billie-Jo in the recovery position or even check that she was breathing like the operator instructed him to do, and when asked if she was breathing, he responded, quote, "I don't know, I haven't looked," end of quote. It was later alleged that this was because he knew she was already dead and beyond help, and he was the one who murdered her. Only minutes after finding Billie-Jo, Siôn also answered the door to a visiting colleague without even telling him that anything was wrong. Siôn's conflicting accounts were also called into question. At first, he told police that he never actually entered the house when returning from the clarinet lesson, but he later admitted that he did enter the house. He may have changed his story when he realized that his two other daughters would give different versions of events. He even told the operator when he called 999 that he was at the DIY store for 35 to 45 minutes, but it later turned out that he was actually gone only for 10 minutes. After her murder, Billie-Jo was found with a piece of plastic bin liner in her nose. This came from plastic material that Siôn left out on the patio for Billie-Jo to help with her painting. There was also a bucket of water by Billie-Jo that the other girls used to clean the car outside the front of the house. Police believed this was taken to the patio at the back of the house by Siôn. Billie-Jo's post-mortem examination revealed that her skull had been split. So with all of this information, on 14th of March 1997, Siôn was charged with the murder of Billie-Jo. But this would be far from over. At Siôn's first trial in 1998, the prosecution revealed that 158 bloodstains were found on his shoes, trousers and jacket. And this was impact spatter from the assault on Billie-Jo. Forensic scientists told the police that they believed the pattern of the blood was the result of impact spatter. The bloodstains had the appearance of a fine spray, and two expert scientific witnesses stated that the appearance and distribution of the pattern was consistent with the suggestion that Siôn was the attacker. Both of them agreed that it was typical of the fine back spatter you would find on an assailant when a weapon came into contact with an already bloodied surface. The defense called on two of their own scientific witnesses, but they were not very helpful for Siôn because they both stated that the evidence was not inconsistent with Siôn being the attacker. Siôn claimed that any blood found on his clothing was the result of him trying to help Billie-Jo. However, forensic experts said that similar stains were not found on both of the paramedics or the neighbor who tried to save her, and no blood was found on their clothing at all. The defense carried out experiments to try and prove that the blood could have got on him from Billie-Jo breathing out on him as she died. However, one pediatrician called the defense impossible, and the pathologist concluded that her injuries would have been so severe that she would not have been physically able to take the breaths to be able to do this, and described the experiments as wholly unrealistic. He stated that she would have had to have inhaled 2.2 liters of air to be able to exhale forcefully enough for the blood to spatter, and said that this was highly unlikely. If this would have been the case, she would have been seen breathing, but no witness said that she was. He concluded that the possibility of spraying of droplets by breathing to be so remote that it can be discounted. Siôn claimed at trial that Billie-Jo could be disobedient and impatient, stating, quote, "She would simply destroy items of clothing or hurt herself ripping the heads off dolls. If she was asked to do something, she might not do it. And if she did something, she might become impatient," end of quote. The court also heard of the lies Siôn conceived on his CV at trial, and it was said that he was under considerable stress at the time, since he would have been dismissed if his qualifications were found to be fabricated. His new job was due to start the next September. Siôn had claimed that he obtained 10 O-levels in 1973, but in fact he obtained only 3 grade C O-levels in art, English and history, 1 D grade in arithmetic, and E grades in French and physics. He also claimed he had a teacher qualification in English with drama, but in fact it was in physical education. He also claimed he had attended the University of London when he actually attended the less prestigious University of East London. Siôn Jenkins was convicted of the murder of Billie-Jo on 2nd of July 1998 by unanimous decision, despite the jury being told by the judge that a majority verdict alone would be enough for a conviction. He was sentenced to life imprisonment. The judge concluded that he was a danger to the community. The detective superintendent in charge of the case, Jeremy Payne, said that the murder was a brutal act carried out in a moment of incomprehensible rage and violence. The police surgeon who had certified Billie-Jo's death said that in his 26 years as a surgeon, this was without doubt the saddest and most brutal murder he has ever attended. After Siôn was convicted of the murder, the judge revealed that he had also been charged with obtaining pecuniary advantage by deception relating to the lies he conceived about his qualifications when applying for his job. The charge was ordered to remain on file. After his conviction, Siôn appealed, claiming that the blood on his clothes had been sprayed onto him as Billie-Jo breathed out as she died. The judge at his appeal in 1999 disagreed and concluded that even if Billie-Jo had been able to breathe out as she lay dying, blood spattering would not reach the height on his clothing at which spattering was found, so the appeal was dismissed. The Criminal Case Review Commission investigated the case and heard evidence again from a scientific witness called by the defense, whose conclusions were rejected during the 1999 appeal. The witness claimed that the bloodstains could have resulted from a rare condition which would have caused gases build up in Billie-Jo's lungs, causing her to breathe out blood involuntarily. The CCRC referred the case back to the Court of Appeal in 2004. At this appeal, Siôn's legal team submitted to the court that this unidentified man could have been responsible for the murder. However, the court rejected this claim, finding that there was no evidence this alleged suspect killed Billie-Jo, and forensic and identification evidence in fact indicated the opposite. Siôn's defense team had already been aware of the evidence regarding this alleged suspect at trial, but they didn't raise it as part of their strategy. The man had a confirmed alibi. Witnesses put him at least 15 minutes away from the house at a crucial moment. It would not have been possible for him to go to the house from the location he was last seen at by witnesses in time to murder Billie-Jo. Siôn said that Billie-Jo was alive and well before he set off on his 10-minute trip to the DIY store with his 2 other daughters, and she was found dead as soon as she came back. This meant that any other murderer would have had to break into the garden, find a weapon and kill Billie-Jo during the same 10 minutes that Siôn was away, and then escape without anyone noticing, but this was just impossible. The appeal court regarded the alternative explanation of the rare condition, as you would never guess it, as making the conviction unsafe, stating it may have affected the decision of the jury if it would have been mentioned in the initial trial. So the appeal was allowed, but a retrial was ordered, with Siôn being released on bail. At the retrial in 2005, forensic scientists stated that the microscopic blood spray could have been released from Billie-Jo's injured airway as Siôn moved her. The jury was unable this time to come to a majority verdict after 39 hours of deliberating, and a second retrial was ordered. At the second retrial, the prosecution stated that the jury would have to decide whether the blood on Siôn got there when Billie-Jo was attacked or when Siôn discovered her body. It was also noted that Siôn could have been in a sexualized relationship with Billie-Jo at the time, and evidence from his other children suggested that he preferred Billie-Jo to them. The second retrial was unable to reach a majority verdict after 3 months of evidence, and it's unbelievable. At the Old Bailey in London on 9th of February 2006, Siôn Jenkins was declared in consequence to be acquitted. The Crown Prosecution Service indicated that no further retrials of Siôn would be requested. He became the first man in British criminal history to be acquitted after being tried 3 times for the same crime. The police investigation, trials and appeals are estimated to have cost £10 million. 700 witness statements were taken by the police, and jurors spent 36 days deliberating in 3 trials. Siôn spent 11 days in the witness box giving evidence. Siôn's acquittal was controversial as it came to light that the jury didn't hear evidence from his wife at the time, from Lois, who described him as a violent man who beat the children with a stick and previously injured her. She claimed that he once hit her so hard that she got a perforated eardrum, and said that their marriage was a violent one. Siôn was highly volatile and was easily enraged. However, Siôn denied that he ever hit his children or his wife in the press, but his children responded by claiming that their father was lying and used corporal punishment against them. And it really did turn into a circus, because Siôn claimed that his wife was making up this story, blaming the police for influencing her on what to say so that he can be convicted. And in turn, she influenced the children to say that he was violent towards them. Lois, on the other hand, said that a few days after Billie-Jo's death, Siôn spoke with Annie and Lottie about that day and told Annie to remember that she was with him. So Lois claimed that he tried to convince Annie to give him an alibi just to cover his bum. Also highly controversial was the final retrial judge's decision to reject new forensic evidence, which showed that the bloodstains on Siôn's clothing also contained small fragments of Billie-Jo's bone and flesh, which appeared to indicate it got there as a result of Siôn beating her. The scientific evidence conducted by scientists from the University of Cambridge also found that the bloodstains contained tiny fragments of metal from the tent peg which had been used to beat her. The reason given for this evidence not being admitted was that it was introduced too late for the defense to respond. The biological family of Billie-Jo, who always maintained that Siôn was guilty, blamed the outcome of the trial on this and vowed to fight on in order to get Siôn reconvicted. In 2008, Siôn applied for £500,000 worth of compensation for his imprisonment, but his application was rejected and he said that he would not appeal. The reason given for the refusal of compensation by the Ministry of Justice was that there was no evidence that conclusively proved his innocence. Siôn Jenkins later claimed that he knew who killed Billie-Jo, saying that a smartly dressed man he mistook for a police officer whom he saw in the hallway of his home in the first hour after he discovered her body must have been the killer. Quote, "I have stood face to face with him, I have spoken with him, I know what he looks like and remember his mannerisms," he wrote in his book. "The man was standing in the hall. I turned around and looked at him. He said, 'She's going to be okay.' He then left me staring at the door to the dining room. I honestly believe this man is responsible for my daughter's murder. I believe he killed her in cold blood for reasons that I can only speculate and surmise." End of quote. In a February 2022 Channel 5 documentary on the case, members of the police investigative team stated that Siôn Jenkins continued to lie in the book he wrote on Billie-Jo's murder after his acquittal. In the book, he claimed that he was forced to sign police statements that he never read, but officers said he meticulously read every written summary of interviews after they had concluded in the day and constantly made his own notes during these interviews. After Siôn was formally acquitted, Sussex police maintained that there are no plans to reopen the murder investigation, but despite this, on 31st of January 2022, a forensic review of the case was announced by Sussex police, although it was revealed that the wider investigation was not being reopened. Whilst in prison, Lois divorced Siôn and he then started corresponding with Christina Fernyhough, a 71-year-old millionaire divorcee and former Miss South Sea beauty queen. They married in April 2005 before his retrials. After being released, he moved to Lymington, Hampshire with his new wife. Soon after his final acquittal for the murder of Billie-Jo, he enrolled on a criminology course at the University of Portsmouth. Siôn Jenkins, now 64 years old, goes by the name Charles Jenkins and is believed to live in York with his wife. After Lois divorced him, she and their daughters moved to Tasmania, where she married martial arts expert Vince Ives, with whom she has a son. She recently turned 61 and her 4 daughters are now in their 30s, all with children of their own.
My daughter's fallen or she's got head injuries, there's blood everywhere.
There's not a speck of visible blood on him.
It was absolutely obvious it was.
On 19th of January 2008, in Alexandra Park, Hastings, a memorial seat made from a locally felled oak tree by local artist Jock Hare was dedicated to the memory of Billie-Jo. The first few words on the seat read, quote, "Side by side or miles apart, friends are close to the heart," end of quote. Billie-Jo's biological father, Bill, died of cancer in 2006, while her mother, Deborah, passed away in 2018. This month, 15th of February, marked what should have been Billie-Jo's 40th birthday. Instead, she's in a grave in the Children's Corner of the City of London Cemetery, where she will forever remain a child. Billie-Jo Jenkins was only 13 years old when she was brutally murdered. She was a stunning, happy-go-lucky teenager, always smiling, full of life, madly in love with her dog, Staffordshire Terrier Buster, and always with her best friend. She had her whole life in front of her. She dreamed of becoming an actor. She loved performing in school plays, dancing and singing, and just enjoying her teenage years, but instead her life brutally ended. In my opinion, I don't see any other possibility than Siôn killing Billie-Jo. I don't want him to sue me, so I'm just going to say, Siôn, I think that you did it, allegedly. There is absolutely no other way, in my opinion. The 10 minutes window of opportunity was just too small for someone to go in the garden, conveniently find a weapon already there, and kill Billie-Jo and then flee in the middle of the day without being seen. Billie-Jo would have had just enough time to run through the house away from a stranger, whereas if it was someone who she knew, she didn't quite expect that to happen to her, so obviously her instinct wouldn't be to run. I think that Siôn allegedly lost it in the moment. Maybe even with the black bag with the blanket in that Siôn had given Billie-Jo earlier in the day. Maybe she still made a mess and this angered him. He confronted her, maybe they argued, he got really angry and he grabbed whatever he could find near her and struck her and, you know, just kept going until she fell. Maybe that's why he told the neighbor there was an accident. He's not going to say that he killed her, but he knew that she was dead. Maybe this would explain why the neighbor found the plastic in Billie-Jo's nostril. Maybe Siôn stuffed the plastic bag in her face in anger, telling her that even if he gave her the bag, she still made a mess with the painting. Quite honestly, it really is so sad that the murderer, in my opinion, walks free and Billie-Jo may never get the justice that she rightly deserves. Thank you guys for watching today's video with me, and thank you to Patricia for suggesting this. Please do let me know what do you guys think in the comment section down below. Do you think that Siôn is guilty, or do you think that there is some other mystery murderer who was never found? Please, I really want to hear your opinions in the comments below. Also, if you are interested in any of the makeup that I used for today's video, all of the products are linked in the description under the video. For now, take care, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!